I'm going to like breeze through what we did last week, just so you can see it in the context of how I would move forward, but I'm not going to be spending as much time there. Always working with the client's breath, like finding my sync as the person exhales. Letting them breathe as they inhale, and then I can sync in on my exhale. Finding that myofascial approach to palpation, falling away from the midline. I fall, my sink, drag and fall. Sink, drag and fall. Sink, drag and fall. Sink, drag and fall. And just for the purposes of this class, I know that you've learned in other classes to like palpate the whole body to start. And I would just say, just for the sake of time, we're gonna just palpate where we're working that day. Tucking at the waist. That way it stays where it needs to be. Finding the wrist. Making sure we have a slight bend to the elbow so we can access the sides of the body. Contact, we're gonna sink, drag the tissue in a direction, and then fall in that direction. We can start the way that we did last week. You can either take a palm walk or just fall into your hands, and that fall is what will move your hands. Does everyone know what I mean when I say that? The fall will move your hands? Like, instead of me trying to move my hands, it's my body weight that's pushing my hands forward. Can slide up the sides of the body here if you'd like. I'm already thinking like that image of the intercostal space. I can let my finger pads really sit and sink into those spaces. If I were to let go, I'd fall. I'd hit Corianne. All without oil. Finding the occipital ridge and letting my weight sink back. You also have the option to practice skin rolling again if you like. You can do it unilaterally on one side. You can do it bilaterally on both until you get to the occiput. That's an option, okay? I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna add a little bit of lotion here. I didn't bring mine with me today. I couldn't wear socks. It's too hot. Arguably, this is grosser if it's hotter to be wearing sweaty clogs, but moving a lot slower than I am, but I'm just breezing through, right? Tractioning, sinking the skin away from the low back. You can do optional skin rolling here with the oil if you want. We're gonna move to one side. So this says the left, so we're gonna move to the left. And we're gonna move into stripping of the erectors. Yeah, okay. Stripping of the erectors here. You can use heel of hand, you can use finger pads. When I'm using finger pads, I just like to stack my hands here. Otherwise, it's like a lot of effort. You can see it on my fingers. And it feels kind of tiring for me around here. So stacking my hands and just differentiating, like pushing my weight into my finger pads feels a bit more comfortable there. I'm gonna walk myself to the opposite side of the table so everyone can move with me. And this way I can fall, similarly how we did last week. Working along the QL or thoracolumbar tissue there. I can trace the iliac crest with finger pads, falling in the direction. And I can start to pull back here. So same idea of when we traction the skin away from the low back. Here I'm thinking about also tractioning the skin away from the low back, but I'm just on a diagonal. I'm seeing a nice breath into the low back. That usually tells me to slow down. And here I'm thinking about sinking into those intercostals. And Ray, if you want to take a breath towards my fingers here. And letting it go when you're ready. Active range of motion, pin and stretch for the intercostals, right? Ray's doing it on his own. I'm simply pinning that muscle, and then I'm asking him to perform the action of that muscle. Active range of motion because Ray is doing it. You can do this falling off of the erectors, dragging, all the way up to the scapula until you come to the scapula. We're then gonna move into something called lobster claw. So I'm gonna have one hand below the scapula and one hand above. As I fall off with my myofascial release, I'm gonna pull back and I'm gonna feel for the bony landmarks that we revisited last week of the inferior angle of the scapula and the clavicle in the front here. So I can be able to pick up the scapula like this. There is no need to ever do, Ray, I'm just gonna show it, the hand behind the back thing, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think sometimes we see a lot of this here to be able to get into this. I'm telling you right now, I don't think it's necessary. I also, we don't know anyone's experience with this kind of action of hands behind the back. We don't need to do it. And I personally think that it can also create some pinching in the front. It's not great. I don't love it. It's not my favorite. And while we're in this class, I'd like to just try this way, which is as I pull back, these finger pads are gonna find underneath the scapula. And then this hand is going to bring that scapula into my hand here so that I can perform passive range of motion of the scapula. And I'm using my whole body here. I'm not just using my arms. That'll get very tiring for me. I'm thinking about whole body.
So you're hooking into both points?
Yes, yes. And we'll come around and make sure that everyone feels this, okay? I know the association is often ee, that looks scary. Yeah, it's gonna be fine.
Are you pinning a muscle while you're doing this motion, or?
This is really passive range of motion. Yeah, I'm not doing any kind of pinning yet, but a pin that I could come into would be for the levator scap. I'm gonna pin along the origin point of the levator scap, which is gonna be right below the occiput. And then I'm going to move the levator scap tissue away from my point. This would be pin and stretch. Moving pin and stretch, right? Why? Because this is moving versus if I were to just stay. So this could be pin and stretch of the levator scap. From here, we're gonna do more thorough arm work later, but for today, we can fall off into the arm and still practice our myofascial release. Working below the elbow here, making sure to not put any downward pressure on the joints. And then falling in that direction. So we've essentially traveled from here to here to here. So I'm kind of moving around a bit. From here, we're gonna do something that should be familiar to all of you. Butterfly. I'm going to move into a pin right below the iliac crest. Okay, this is a really great hidden stretch for quadratus lumborum, which we looked at last week, as well as the erectors. Okay, so I'm going to pin, which means I'm sinking. This one I'm using my forearm. I'm going to sink and drag the tissue away towards the feet. Okay, this is my sink. This is relaxed. I'm chilling. This hand is going to perform the stretch. I'm going to slide in with the knife edge of my hand here until I get to the meaty part of my forearm. I'm going to make sure this pin stays compressed and dragging towards raised feet as I sink and fall to drag the tissue away from my pin. Show this again.
Are you putting any weight into the arm that's moving up too, or are you putting it all in the pin arm? Like, are you?
My body weight's going into both.
Both.
So this is like supporting me.
Yeah.
And then the reason why this is moving is because I'm
Shifting right now.
yeah, and you can see my body mechanics a bit. I'm making sure that I'm always behind my work versus on the side of it. When I'm on the side of it, I'm using my shoulder to perform the action. It can get very tiring and it's very effortful for me. Versus when I am behind it, I can just lean forward. And that way it's my body weight controlling the pressure versus me forcing it. Yes. This is a really good check-in point. I have it listed on your protocol as this is a good place to check in. Ray, more or less pressure, or we're good where we are?
This is good.
Okay. I'm asking more or less, or we're good where we are, not like, Ray, is the pressure good? Yeah, it's like that's perfectly fine, but sometimes I feel like people are not totally honest with you, and I just feel like giving all the options possible, yes, no, good where we are, lets people answer honestly, okay? You can do this a few times if you like, this butterfly thing. We can come into another pin and stretch at the end of this. My forearm is gonna fold over, and now I'm doing the same thing I already did, levator scap, oh my God, I'm sweating. I'm doing the same levator scap pin and stretch, but I'm just standing from a different angle. So now my pin, instead of is at the occiput, now I'm pinning more into like upper traps and the sort of ends of the levator scapula. And my stretch will be moving away from that pin, okay? So if you guys come really close, and you can bring the camera in even closer, I want you to watch this tissue here underneath my finger pads, if everyone can see it, where my finger pads are. And then I'm going to, do you see the skin sliding out from underneath my finger pads? Mm-hmm. That's your pin and stretch. I'll do it again. Pin, sink, compress, right? Drag. It doesn't look like much, but it feels, I mean, I don't know, Ray, how does it feel? Do you feel that sensation of tissue drag?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. From here, you can do that a few times, as much as you like, but I'll guide you through it. We're gonna bring the arm off the table. So, I do a couple of these motions. To bring the arm off the table, I'm gonna support both joints, elbow and wrist. Okay, we always wanna support both. This can feel terrible. This can feel terrible and also scary. So, especially if someone's like pretty out of it and then like part of you drops off the table, I would be like, oh my God. So you can also take a seat and do this. Elbow, wrist, bringing it off the table, okay? Can you scroll down for me, Audrey? It's okay, just if you just slide your fingers up, other way. You got it, you got it, you got it.
I love that myofascial release
Cool.
is kind of like what we instinctively
Perfect.
do. Like we do it to ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
Already.
Oh yeah. Okay. So we did the communication track point, bow and arrow pin and stretch. That's what I call this also. Like if it's like, think of like bow and arrow, like you're pulling one point back, this stays, and then you, wait, how does it go? Something like this.
Yeah,
Yeah. I feel like people know what's going on. So that's like another way of me explaining it, of like sort of like, this is my bow and arrow a little bit, okay? I abduct the arm off the table, And then we're gonna move into a little scoop pancake situation. So I'm going to, I can disperse what I'm working with, but I don't want us to be like getting into the effleurage of things. The challenge of this class is actually doing everything but effleurage and petrissage and milking. I want us to like really stay within this myofascial approach. So even as you disperse your oil or lotion or whatever you're working with, you can still find your sink, your drag, and your fall, right? Pancaking looks like this. So I have one hand on the top, one hand on the bottom. Bony landmarks that I'm using to know where I am. If you feel for the person's clavicle and you line it up with your index finger, essentially, if you can do this on yourself, if you go for the clavicle, your index finger wants to be right below the clavicle so that the rest of your fingers fall in line with where the pec is. We're gonna get into more pec work when we flip supine, but just so you have that as an idea. Pancake, I'm gonna sink my hands and fall back. Stripping of, what's this guy here, does anyone remember? Rhomboids. I can do myofascial release on the triceps. Sink, drag, fall. I can do passive range of motion, pin and stretch, by extending the elbow. So I'm putting these muscles, these fibers in slack. I sink the tissue away from the joint. Sorry, was that a weird? No, it's good. Okay. And then as I keep that sink or my pin and I fall into that compression, I'm going to slowly bend the arm, pin and stretch with passive range of motion on the triceps. Pin, stretch. Moving pin and stretch. Static pin and stretch. Is that clear?
How many times would you do the pin and stretch like in a normal? It seems you don't want to do too much the same muscle, or?
There's no like wrong answer, but I'm not obviously gonna like do the same thing like 10 times over, but I wanna, essentially my goals is I'm trying to translate this sensation to the client, and give them time to like interpret the signal or the sensation. So if that lands around roughly 3 times, yeah, a couple times. We then can come into teres. So the way that I like to find teres is I'm gonna slide as if I could just slice right across Ray's like top layer here. So I'm not gonna think about going up and over. From the upper arm along the humerus, I'm just gonna slide right straight across. And Ray, you let me know if I come across a point that feels very tender here.
All good.
Okay, so this is gonna be sort of where I'm gonna aim for. It'll be different on different bodies that you work on, but I'm essentially just letting Ray know, hey, let me know if I hit across something that feels very tender, in his words, sore, which is also okay. We're not trying to we're not trying to translate more pain. I just wanna know the general area. From there, we can perform internal rotation of the humerus, which is what this muscle is responsible for. So I can pin with a finger pad. I can pin with a heel of hand or a heel of hand. And then internal rotation is gonna happen with this hand. I'm gonna roll the humerus forward. Pin and stretch of the teres major. I could also be contacting rotator cuff here. Like, these muscles do not live separately. There's tissue that covers all of them and connects all of them. So while I'm here, I could absolutely, could be pin and stretch on the rotator cuff. Sort of the most lateral fibers of the infraspinatus and supraspinatus. I'm gonna move into my pin, maintain my pin. You see I'm leaning forward here from my hips. I'm not thinking about pushing from my shoulder. I'd burn out in like 30 minutes if I was doing stuff for my shoulders. It'd be very, very tiring. Here I am, here's my pin. My fingers can soften back down onto Ray, and then I can roll the humerus forward. We all see that skin coming out from underneath my hand. I'll do it again. Pin. Look right there. Got the money shot. I'll do it one more time. This is a different pin, a little bit more small, so it's going to be more specific sensation. Pin, stretch.
With that pin, you're sending it down this way or just pinning it in place?
I'm still falling like towards
the
you
membrane.
guys. Yeah.
Okay,
Lats that we looked at that cover this sheath here. It's nearby. It's a nice place to move into. Pin and stretch with passive range of motion. I'm just going to have my hand fall a little bit lower to where the lats insert on the lower inferior angle of the scapula. And then this hand is going to be responsible for moving the arm. Right? I know it's a lot. We're gonna do it together. Pin. I'm falling in that direction. I keep falling in that direction. What I often end up seeing happening is this. Both hands moving away from each other together, and then we lose that very specific sensation of the pin for which the stretch makes like a big sensation, right? Pin, stretch. You could also ask Ray to do this action. So Ray, when you're ready, I want you to bring your hand up to the height of the table and then reach through your fingers like Superman out on the diagonal, and then you can let your arm fall, okay? When I say go, you can start that. I'm gonna come into that. I can pin around the lats, I can pin around the rotator cuff. Maybe I'll do both. And Ray, you can go for it. And reaching forward. And letting that go. Pin and stretch with active range of motion. I could follow this up with some stripping down into the QL. That could feel nice. Just felt like Barbra Streisand for a moment. I'm gonna come back to the elbow and the wrist to move it back to the table. And again to find the table again. Bilateral stroke to integrate or to just give this person a more like sort of, okay, this is neutral, this is center. We sort of talked about that broad, specific broad last week. So this is my broad. You could come along the sides and lift up. This is a different way of finding underneath the scapula. And just lean back. You can let your head drop too, that can feel nice for you. Woo. And then we'll do the other side. Okay. Once we've done the other side, we'll redrape. Just getting in the hang of this, it's just a really good skill to have.
You think we're gonna do like differentiation today too, or?
Yeah, I did say that.
Okay.
Differentiation. There's going to be more opportunities to apply that in different areas. For today, a great place to apply it would be on the triceps. So instead of my intention being this broader approach to myofascial release, my intention might be to sort of feel for in between the different heads and sink and fall in between each one. And my intention is to like translate this feeling of like almost, I'm imagining, do you remember those pick and peel Twizzlers? Like the licorice that has the sort of different sections and you pull it out, or like string cheese. I'm thinking about almost like finding, like sinking in between each of those strands to straighten them out. Does that make sense? So I don't have any oil on my hands, but This would be, differentiation can happen with heel of hand, and my intention is just to like really do more specific work in between these different fibers. You can also use thumbs.
It's more kind of working on the separate fibers separately rather than trying to get in between them? Or
You are wanting to get in between them both. Yeah. It's just more so that like, instead of something that's like broad, we're working more specifically in like almost increments to like think about separating these fibers that can get really caught together. Thank you, Cam, for inviting me back into what I said I was gonna do. And then we'll come into passive touch. So let's have, thank you so much.